Hey everybody, Caleb Crew here with Caleb Crew Reports and Predicts. Uh, we're just waiting for Delegate Glen Davis to hop on. He's a candidate for Lieutenant Governor, and we're so lucky to have him on to come on here and talk with him about his run for Lieutenant Governor. He's a candidate in the Republican primary and a delegate from Virginia Beach. So once he hops on here, we'll get this thing started. Thank you guys all for tuning in, and we're just going to wait for Delegate Davis for a minute. Hey, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to Caleb Crew Reports and Predicts, and I'm just very blessed and very happy to have Delegate Glen Davis with us. Glen is running for Lieutenant Governor, and he is from Virginia Beach, and Glen is if not the front runner, one of the front runners for the Republican nomination. He ran back in 2017, where I got to meet him, and so according to Twitter poll, if you believe Twitter polls, but he was the overwhelming front runner, and he definitely probably is the best known candidate right now, and the only one that has ran statewide on the Republican side. So, Delegate Davis, if you'd like to start out by just introducing yourself, tell everybody a little bit about yourself and what you've done and accomplished in the House of Delegates that you think qualifies you to be Lieutenant Governor, and just your background as well.
Sure. So no, I appreciate it, and thank you so much for having me on here. I'm born and raised in Virginia, specifically out here in Hampton Roads, not Virginia Beach. I grew up over down this way, and except for a few years at George Mason, spent my life down here in the Hampton Roads area. I started my first business back in 1999 out of a one-bedroom apartment. It was a telecommunications company, and as you know, and you've probably heard, I'm a tech guy. I always kind of have been. And from there, you know, it was an interesting thing. I lost my my job about 6 weeks before Christmas in '99, and it was either try to find a company or a job during the worst time of the year to do it, or start something. And I always wanted to start a company, so I did out of a one-bedroom apartment. Didn't tell my parents I lost my job, till New Year's. It was kind of like good news, bad news thing. Mom, dad, bad news, I lost my job. Good news, I don't have to move in quite yet. And thankfully, yet never happened. And, in 2007, that telecommunications company was one of the 100 fastest growing IT companies in the US, according to Inc. magazine. And it's not because I'm one of the smartest guys you're going to meet, but I was raised that hard work solves everything, right? We're all given the chance at the American dream because through hard work and dedication. It's what my great-grandfather came here from Italy, what he believed in. He barely spoke English, very little in his pocket, but he could grind blades and shears. And that's what he did. My grandfather dropped out of school in the 8th grade to go work for his father, and went to World War II, came back and ran that business until he was in his 70s. One of the smartest businessmen I ever met was my grandfather with an 8th grade education, and I learned a lot from him. But I started out in politics on the Virginia Beach City Council for 5 years. After that, in 2013, had the chance to run for the Virginia House of Delegates. I was honored to be elected to serve the 84th district. Ironically, the same district that I served as Bob McDonnell's legislative aide in the mid-90s. So I literally have my 84th district legislative aide card when I was, 22. And I have my 84th district member card now. It's kind of still a little bit of a deja vu for me. And then honored now to be able to run for Lieutenant Governor. I obviously met you going around back in 2016, last time I ran, and made a lot of friends. And the great thing about this time is it's not just going around making friends. I'm making obviously new friends, but I'm also getting to see a lot of friends that I've made over the last 4 years out across the Commonwealth.
Yeah, and I think Virginia politics was just going to be better off because Mel Yellow is going to be out, and Shelley's cookies are going to be out as well. So that's going to really make it a better political scene. So one of the questions and topics I wanted to touch on is very important to after we get out of this pandemic, and it's been really touched upon by by a lot of delegates and in the General Assembly, and something I think you definitely have a eye for, and that is economics and how specifically, being in Southwest Virginia on these, and when I had former Speaker Cox on, I touched upon it too, and it was how do you see that we get rural, because some parts of Virginia have done very well in the past economically, but the rural areas, especially in Southwest Virginia, never got a piece of that pie. So what's your vision on how we get rural economies to be as competitive as the urban and suburban economies we see in other parts of Virginia?
Sure. Well, no, I appreciate the question. And as you know, back in 16, I spent a lot of time going out to that neck of the woods and sleeping in my RV out there as I staying a couple of days. And the reason why is I'm very excited. I'm a business person. First, I like challenges. The second thing is you try to find where the greatest opportunity lies in return on investment. And I will tell you that investing in Northern Virginia still has a little bit of return, investing in Hampton Roads, but the greatest opportunity for that return on that investment dollar, I think, is in Southwest Virginia, because you have a very dedicated, hard-working workforce. Unfortunately, have been hit with numerous challenges, the coal industry and that sort of thing, opioids, but the workforce is there. And now there's so much additional opportunity. We had broadband come across into Virginia from overseas. That broadband has been in some cases already, in other cases still being extended out to Southwest. And if we can do a couple of things, the first is making sure that there's sufficient supply of broadband around Southwest Virginia. The biggest thing that strikes me, Caleb, is when students grow up there, they go away to school, they get a great education, and then they want that great paying job, right? But if that job isn't back home in Southwest Virginia, they don't go back home. And it's that workforce, the next generation workforce that is essentially leaving the area. But with broadband, you can have a great high paying job and go back to where your friends and family are and where you're vested. For example, nowadays to be a radiologist, reading x-rays, it's a very well-paying job, very high-paying job. You don't have to be in a hospital. I know some people that do it down here for some facilities up in New York. And, as long as you've got access to high-speed internet and you've got that education, you can do that via that telework environment. So one of the most important things we need to do is to make sure that that broadband network is brought all around the Commonwealth, specifically to Southwest, and not old technology. We don't need to bring, in 1999, 2005 technology out to Southwest. There is new broadband technology out there that not only will supply high-speed internet, Caleb, to individuals in their houses, but also be the jumping board, be the springboard for next level technology like autonomous vehicles. The most important thing for autonomous vehicles is what they call a mesh network, so that vehicles can talk to each other, a mile down the road and adjust appropriately. But you need to have the right technology that allows for that. You think of that umbrella covering of Wi-Fi as you're going down the major interstates. So the great thing about Southwest Virginia being where they are today, and we're bringing these types of technologies, is I don't have to bring old technology. I don't have to rely on old technology. We can bring the newest. And what should happen is Southwest Virginia literally leapfrogs over technology in other parts of the state, because why? Well, do what many countries out in Europe did. Landline phones were cabling, for phones was first mostly in the United States. When other countries got down to the point where they were looking at telecommunications, Wi-Fi, wireless technology was already a real potential. And so that's why for the longest time, wireless use in technology for telecommunications was greater in countries overseas than it was here. Because why lay down 1960 technology when you've already got the next level? So we can get to do the same thing out there. The second thing is recognize the unique opportunities that Southwest Virginia has had in the past and capitalize on. You remember when I went through there, I talked a lot about coal and graphene. I always said, this isn't the coal industry is not dead. It's just not your grandfather's coal industry anymore, right? And I talked about graphene. I talked about powdered coal. I went to MIT and met with the leading scientists out there on coal, and went to Estonia and talked to the largest company in ultracapacitors, which uses graphene technology, carbon technology. And it just so happened last year before session, I got a ring from some guys out in Wise, Virginia. And one of them had heard me talk about this technology. And when I was going around giving my speeches around Southwest, running for lieutenant governor 4 years ago, and they asked me to come out and meet with them and share what I had learned at MIT and overseas. And today there is a graphene research facility out there in Wise. You know, that's something I'm excited to see, and I love it because that is where it should be. And more importantly, we should have the next generation of research and development and investment out in Wise, Virginia, when it comes to innovation for energy. There's so much opportunity. I put Terry Kilgore and I sat out there with the president of UVA Wise, and I put them on the phone with the scientists over at MIT, because there was an opportunity, and there still, I believe, is, for UVA Wise to partner with MIT on coal technology. You know, I used to always say, but it's still true today, it takes one layer of powdered coal to have the same sunlight absorption and energy transference as 7 layers of silicon. And so if we look at solar power and you talk to the scientists over at MIT, they'll say the same thing. Powdered coal is how we truly get to harness the most solar opportunity. Well, if you're going to talk about coal, why wouldn't you be talking about it and doing innovation with it out in Southwest Virginia? And so that's my thing, is let's bring the broadband out there for education, for that foundation for all the students. Let's make sure it's there to make sure that workforce can come back home for those high-paying jobs. And then let's make sure that Southwest Virginia is known for that next generation of coal innovation coming around.
Yeah, and that just is very encouraging to hear this research on the coal, and we've really had to shift the economy. But we've had some good news in Washington County. We've had a couple there's a guardrail company, some other companies that are investing, and out in Tazewell County, in conjunction with Russell County, they just landed at Pure Salmon LLC. That's going to bring 200 jobs. It's a fish manufacturing plant that Delegate Moorfield worked for, I don't know, 7 or 8 years on. And it's going to be, I think, a $300 investment, 1 million square foot facility, one of the largest aquaculture facilities in the world. So we're seeing a lot of positive move, but especially with this with graphene, it's looking encouraging. Also,
and to that point, Caleb, you know that with Warren Moorfield, I mean, a good friend of mine in the House of Delegates, amazing representative for Southwest Virginia. But you know, I worked with him a couple years ago on that economic development incentive and package that was finally passed out there in Southwest, and did a lot of opportunity.
Yeah, and it's really helped, and your help with Delegate Moorfield on that bill has been tremendous. Some of these counties have landed multiple industries because of that, and it was just that next generation thinking that we have to have. On another topic kind of related to economic development, what's kind of your vision on reforming education and kind of getting education to the 21st century and able to educate the next level of the workforce?
Well, there's 2 parts of the equation. You know, I chaired the cybersecurity subcommittee a few years ago, and in doing so, the goal was to bring the private sector in association with our universities, so that our students were graduating and getting degrees with the talent, skill sets necessary to become that immediate workforce that those businesses needed. And I think that's, you know, the first step is making sure that our universities are aligned. But more importantly, before that happens, is you have to have the foundation for K through 12. A person's education, the quality of their education, should never be dictated by their zip code. And you know, I think technology solves a lot of problems, Caleb, and I think it helps solve technology. You know, why is it that when I wanted to learn how to do video editing and film, that for, was it $10 a month on Skillshare, I could watch videos from some great professionals teach me how to do video editing and film and cinematography and stuff like that. You know, why is it for $199 a year that I can go to masterclass online and learn how to write a novel by Judy Blume how to do comedy by Steve Martin, how to play poker by David Negreanu. I can learn whatever I want for $199 a year from the best and brightest in the world, but we can't do that for our students. So why is it that I can't use similar technology to help bring experts in different areas that have great skill sets and the ability to reach students on different subjects and help supplement the teachers that we have in different areas around the Commonwealth? So that's what we need to do. The best and brightest teachers should not be restricted just to where they live. We should utilize technology to bring them into the classrooms all over the Commonwealth and make sure that our students have the chance for the strongest foundation, because that's what their success is built upon. So I think that's when you look at the education piece, I think the first thing is utilize technology as much as possible to help bring the best quality education into the classroom. I think school choice, especially in a lot of areas of the Commonwealth, needs to be discussed. Why wouldn't you allow nonprofit entities that are willing to come in and bring wraparound services to come into an area? And then also we need to talk about making sure when that student comes out of high school, they have a skill set that helps them walk into a job if they don't necessarily want to go to college or go to college yet. And then if they come out of college, that degree matches them with a job commensurate with that skill set.
Yeah, and definitely on the teachers. I mean, around here, the pay is not great. I have one of my best friends is a first year middle school teacher. She's teaching Spanish, so but we were just talking about it. There, the counties around here, it's just once the economy gets better, they'll be able to pay teachers more. But some of the ideas you were mentioning, school choice, and kind of just bringing capitalism into education and that competition will really help as well, I think.
Well, but I'll mention this on the pay on teachers, like with your friend, there are some extremely good teachers out there, a lot of good teachers. We cannot afford to have those teachers, one, leave areas for other areas, whether it's in state or out of state, and we can't have them leave teaching when they still have the passion, but the pay, the ability to take care of their family is higher going into the private sector. So we need to recognize that. And that's why I've always said we need to look at teachers and make sure that we have a pay scale that we're able to, as these teachers hit these levels where they're being picked off by the private sector, where they're being enticed to move to different areas, that areas like out in the Southwest, whether it be Tazewell or Abington or wherever, can afford to keep those teachers there because they're vested in that community. They know the students, and that we need to make sure that everyone has great teachers all across the Commonwealth, and they're compensated to be able to stay in those areas.
Right. And see, like our problem is Tennessee, who has a great governor who I work for, who's an amazing man, but they're raising the teacher pay they're trying the next several years to get at around $40,000 a year. And, that's a really hard when you live right on the border of Tennessee, on the Virginia side. It's hard to compete with them on a lot of things. The next I wanted to kind of transition a little bit and, sorry, my cat. He's wanting to say hi and get involved. But kind of I kind of want to focus on the primary and general election kind of overview and some of your votes in the past have Medicaid expansion and things like that put a little caution in the conservative base. So what's kind of your vision on how to unify the party, win the nomination, and then win the general election?
Sure. Well, a couple of things. I'll say, for example, with Medicaid expansion, back in the Medicaid reform, I put together a bill in 2014 with Tom Rust. And that we eventually, in 2018, Medicaid expansion passed, and it was at that point we were a one-vote majority in the House of Delegates when it did, and that bill was not as conservative as what I put together in 2014, because we had the majority back then. We could be a little bit more forceful with what we had. So I would argue that had the General Assembly passed what we had in 2014, the Medicaid reform expansion bill with Tom Rust, that one, I'm willing to bet we would have kept the majority in the House of Delegates. Caleb, everywhere across the Commonwealth is different. I know when I walked my district down here, I saw the polls back then. I saw the polls in 17 and 18. But even on the Republican side, there was significant demand for affordable health care. Look, everyone has friends or family members or neighbors that have been down on their luck, that found themselves on government support, and they want, and we all care about our fellow neighbor and our family members. So we want that affordable health care, but it has to be in a conservative manner that doesn't bankrupt the Commonwealth. So in 2014, we put together a great plan. It is more conservative than what we got stuck with, I would say today. And I would also say that, when we, back then, 20%, what I was talking about around the Commonwealth was that we were all paying for people that didn't have insurance. 20% of the premiums for those having insurance policies was to cover the uninsured when they went to the emergency rooms, right? I mean, so it's either pay me and see it on your bill, or I can make you feel better when I don't show you what you're paying for, right? But the fact of the matter is we were all paying for it. So I would say that Republicans have lost some races, or lost our majority because we got accused of being the party of no for a little while. And I get angry when I hear that, but I sometimes can't argue with it, because when we used to win with George Allen, Bob McDonnell, we were the party of big, bold ideas, and we implemented them. I was with Bob McDonnell yesterday, and we were going and reliving some of the good old days of, George Allen with welfare reform. And I spoke about this all the time, but the Medicaid bill was modeled after what George Allen did with welfare reform. He actually allowed people to keep more assets to stay on welfare so they could, have that second car in their family as they try to get off of welfare. He actually gave them additional child care benefits and while they were on welfare, so they could continue working themselves off the system. And the following year, we had less welfare and Medicaid expenses than we've ever had before. The first time we ever saw that decrease, actually. And so then we had truth in sentencing with George Allen, right? And people love that. And then we kept winning after George Allen. Bob McDonnell wins and the transportation plan. But Caleb, what's the last big, bold idea that you can remember that we as a party said we're going to go after helping solve the challenges of all Virginians, and that we actually did it and then was able to campaign on it? We, I think, for a little while became the party that put its head in the sand. And I've never been good at that. I'm an entrepreneur. A lot of people are. And Donald Trump, he's that entrepreneur type. If we see a problem, we're going to go fix it. We don't know how not to attack an issue and help, fix things for people. So I would say that that I'm as conservative as just about anyone else out there. And I mean that. If anyone can call me, and if we talk philosophically, they will find out that I am extremely conservative. I tend to be a little bit more pragmatic than some, because I do believe that I've been elected to solve problems. I've been elected to solve them in a conservative manner. I have not been elected to vote on sound bites or to make people, feel good or bad about a sound bite. It's good conservative policies. And then lastly, on some things that I have maybe surprised some people for, that I have stuck up for, the Second Amendment. I was one of 3 Republicans on the firearms subcommittee this last year, 9 Democrats, 3 Republicans. And I was on the front lines going after every single gun control bill that came up. There were only 3 Republicans that spoke after the BCDL lobby day on January 20th. And I was one of them, and got up and spoke adamantly about my appreciation for all those that came the day before. I'm a strong Second Amendment supporter, always have been, for 2 reasons. One, I've always shared that I grew up competitively shooting, and secondly, that I do have a tragedy in my family with an uncle that was murdered in a convenience store that's about a mile away from the house that I live in today. And so I'm very strong on people's rights to be able to protect themselves and their families. And then if you look at my other, you look at my other successes on helping small businesses and growing our economy. So I would say that we as a party have sometimes gotten wrapped around the who's 3% more conservative than what anyone else. I think now we need to talk about who can win. And I will tell you that I can win a general election. I have spent 10 years, 5 on city council, now, 6 years now, in the House of Delegates on top of that, building relationships with non-traditional Republican voters. I have those relationships. They've turned to me. Some of them have already endorsed me for lieutenant governor. The Hispanic community down here, a large portion of them on their radio station have already endorsed me. The Indian community down here has already come out for me because I've helped solve problems that they've seen, and mostly in the small business world with those minority businesses. So I would say if the debate is who can win in 2021, the answer is me. I'm the only one that's run for office and never lost to a Democrat. And I will never lose to a Democrat. And it's not because, we spend more than, I think it's almost impossible for a Republican to outspend a Democrat now. But Caleb, you've heard the stories. We don't get outworked. And it's not just a cliche when people talk about me. It's when I ran last year for the House of Delegates for my seat, we got outspent. They spent $1.1 million against us. 500,000 on TV. We spent zero on TV. But those last 5 weeks, I spent 4 nights a week in my office with my campaign manager, working till the wee hours of the morning, because we were not going to get beat, regardless of money. And we won a seat that Gillespie lost by 500 votes. That obviously we got trounced in this year, but I won it by 500 votes because of how we run our campaigns and the hard work we put in.
And when you got Peter Finocchio, that helps a lot.
Yes. When I got Peter Finocchio with me at 2 o'clock in the morning, who at that point passes that on the beanbag next to me, and then we do it again at 8 in the morning. Yes, that goes a long way to have him on board.
Well, Glenn, we're running out of time. So is there anything you want to say really quick to wrap it up?
No, Caleb, I appreciate you having me on. I appreciate the people viewing this. I look forward to getting out in your neck of the woods and seeing the old friends I have out there and making some new ones. And if anyone wants to know more about me, first, the website is www.davis4lg.com. So please go there. Secondly, please email me or please call us. I'm happy to talk to anyone and hope to earn everyone's support out in the Southwest.
Well, thank you so much, Glenn, for coming on. It means so much to me. Thank you so much. And thank you,
you,
everybody, for tuning in.